Six main reasons for terrorism in the world. I'm dictating this post reflecting on what transpired this past week in my country, Canada, as a result of ISIS-inspired terrorism in Quebec and in Ottawa, attacking Parliament Hill, and the death of two officers. So I'm basically doing this as an academic reflection on the root causes of terrorism, and trying to understand. Maybe I should start first by defining what terrorism is. In my mind, terrorism is an ideology of accomplishing certain objective by means of horrific actions that shock and cause the target or the opposition to submit. Terrorism, therefore, is a means to an end, or ends. Terrorism means are always evil. The ends, however, are most likely evil as well, but in the minds of those committing terrorism acts, they believe them to be good, or even sublime or supreme good. From the outset, I would also say that terrorism is not new. Over the centuries and maybe even over the millennia, terrorism has been used by groups or armies when they attack one country to another, one nation to another. In the history of the world, there has been cities that would open their castles, their doors, for fear of the terror that the army around them is going to inflict on them if they don't submit. So it's not new. But in our modern age, the 21st century, terrorism has taken multi-dimensions. Let me just quickly run over the six main reasons that I think are the root causes of terrorism. And the first one, and by far probably the worst, is terrorism that is dictated by some kind of a holy book or holy scriptures, and that commands the faithful to commit these acts of terrorism. And I'm not going to specify any group or any texts, but the reality is that many terrorist groups uses these verses in their scriptures to justify their acts. However, since according to some studies, the majority of nowadays terrorism is caused by jihadists, Islamist fundamentalists, radicalized, whatever the word is that you want to describe it, it's interesting to note that many of the terrorist organizations seem to take verses from their scriptures and put it right there as a symbol of their group to designate them as terrorist organizations even, or to justify their presence. I won't dwell on that. Let's just move to the second reasons that I think terrorism, what terrorism is about, is the faith or belief that it's by means of terrorism and sometimes even committing suicide in the name of your religion, you go straight to heaven, straight to paradise. It's a faith-based motivation that they believe that instead of fasting and praying or doing all kind of things through terrorism, it's a shortcut, it's a ramp, it's an express lane to heaven, and they can avoid waiting in the grave or in purgatory or whatever the religion is. This, through terrorism and through committing acts of suicide and inflicting disasters on their enemy, that would take them directly to and straight to paradise, where virgins and whatever are waiting for them. Let's move to the third reason for terrorism, and that is revenge for perceived wrongs. I believe the 9/11 was justified on that basis, that because the Western powers inflicted so much armies and occupation of Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, whatever, then they're going to respond in kind and do these acts of barbaric proportions. So it's all about taking revenge for the wrongs that the enemy has inflicted upon them. Moving on to the fourth reason, this is through orders that they receive from an authority, a certain higher figure. Interestingly enough, even in the history of Nazi Germany, the excuses that for atrocities that were committed by the Nazis in the Nuremberg trial, they said, well, we were just following orders. Well, in the 21st century, we see fatwa, which is a dictate from a high source to say that thou shalt do this and thou shalt do that, and these are considered to be orders to be obeyed, and there are people out there who are willing to go and commit atrocities in obedience to these fatwa, to these dictates by these higher authorities or religious figures, and whatever the format may be. The fifth reason is actually in pursuit. Terrorism is a way of in pursuit of power, in pursuit of status, in pursuit of a stronger role, to enjoy what you can capture from the enemy, from attacking or controlling or invading. The situation with ISIS right now is a perfect example where terrorism is used so that they can get the people to either submit or, for that matter, they can take their children, their women, sell them as slaves, install a government, and do whatever they want. Their word is one and final. They can do what they want when they want it. So it's a power reason for terrorism, and ISIS is a perfect example of that. The sixth and final reason is that terrorism is used because in a certain situation the weak people perceive that they have no other recourse. They have nothing else left to lose, so they would explode themselves. They would inflict as much terror around them as possible as a last hurrah, or for that matter because they believe that since there's nothing else to lose and everything to gain, why not create the maximum damage that they can on the enemy. So these are my sort of academic reflection on that. I'm sure there are other reasons, but I thought that I would just put them together in front of us so that we can look at them. But my objective is even more than that. It is really to look at these 6 reasons and try and figure out if there is a way to prescribe preventative measures for these root causes of terrorism, rather than trying to treat these root causes after they've already been inflicted. I believe in prevention rather than treatment, and I think if these reasons were in front of us, we could really look at each one of them and see what can be done to prevent terrorism from being generated or created in the first place. Let's continue the dialogue. Thank you.